grandchildren. It was picked to be one of the best photos to run in Life magazine in the last 75 years. So I'm really excited about that, and heard that it's on permanent display in the Time Life building in New York City. We're going to run some slides, and I'll just tell some stories. We go along. If you have any questions? This is very informal. These are all your images. They're all public domain. If you want to see more, over at the George Bush Presidential Library in College Station, at least that's what they call it. In my family, we call it the David Valdez Photo Gallery. I get a kick out of going over there and seeing my photos on display, and actually was recently just invited to be a part of the Briscoe Center for American History at the University of Texas. And I had, actually up in Georgetown where I live now, a 5-foot by 10-foot storage unit full of memorabilia from all the travel I did around the world, and donated it all to the Dolph Briscoe Center. This coming Friday, they're having an exhibit down there showing photos of the presidencies, and not just my photos, but I think they're going to have 100 photojournalists there from around the country having their work on display. And I'm tap dancing. And the exhibit's actually going to be up for a month at the LBJ Library. So if you get a chance, go on down. I have one photo there, but it should be an exciting time. I'm looking forward to meeting those guys. People ask me, how's the president doing these days? I was just in Houston about 2 weeks ago, and he's been ill. He's 88. He said that he was going to skydive again at 90. So we'll see. Okay, here we go. We're getting some. There we go. Okay, let's kill the lights again, please. Okay, so this is down in Houston, Texas. Vice President Bush was just elected president, and what's really funny, about a month ago, I was invited to speak at the Texas Press Association in this very room, and I just really thought it was funny, but that was Vice President Bush and his family. You see Barbara Jenna Bush there in the foreground. And then this is inaugural night with Dan and Marilyn Quayle, Vice President of the United States. They're over at the Lincoln Memorial, and it was a lot of fun. And then Barbara and Jenna Bush again, who later became first daughters. They're the first granddaughters, but that was one of their inaugural events. And then that photo actually ran in Life magazine, and it was kind of fun for me as a photographer to have an association with Life magazine, to get a lot of my stuff published there. And then this is the vice president at Blair House, which is the president's guest house across the street from the White House, just prior to going up and being sworn in as president. And a couple of the granddaughters, the girl closest to the wall up there is Lauren Bush, the daughter of Neil Bush, President Bush's son. Well, Lauren just married Ralph Lauren's son. So guess what her name is? And then, of course, on the inaugural parade, it was a lot of fun. Many years later, out on the internet, somebody found a photo of me taking that photo. which was kind of fun, maybe a little scary. And then the president in the Oval Office for the very first time. There's been a tradition of presidents leaving notes for the incoming president. So President Reagan left a note in the president's desk for President Bush. And so this is literally the first time he sat down at the desk and reading that note. And then this is the Bush family up in Kennebunkport, Maine. I would go up there all the time with him. We were actually up there one time when the military aide came up to the president and said, "Mr. President, the Soviet Union has collapsed." And we were out on the golf course, and you kind of absorb the moment and then keep on going. But you can see George and Laura Bush here, and Neil and Sharon and Jeb, his wife over there, and Doro, the daughter. But we had a lot of fun in Kennebunkport. My very first time there, the president was walking me around. Actually, he was vice president at the time, and he was walking me around the grounds. And the Walker's Point, Kennebunkport, Maine, is out on a peninsula, and so it's right on the water, and they have boats there. And he took me down to the dock, and he said, "This is where I used to go swimming when I was a little boy, and you and I ought to do that. We ought to go swimming." And I'm thinking, I'm from Texas, we're in Maine. I wonder how cold that water is. and I was dressed and had my cameras, and he says, "Oh, come on, let's do it." And so we walked back up to the house, and the front door is actually over here, and this side door goes into their bedroom. And so we walk up there, and I said, "Well, I don't have a swimsuit." He says, "Oh, we got plenty of swimsuits." So we walk into the bedroom. Now, Barbara Bush is there, and a lot of these folks are there. Secret Service, and the windows are open, and he strips down, and I'm looking around. Okay, I'll take off my clothes and put on a swimsuit, and let's go. So we get down to the dock, and he says, "Okay, on the count of 3, we'll jump." So 1, 2, 3, and I jump, and he walks back up to the house. So I South Texas guy, hit that Maine water, and it was tough. Then I had to walk back up to the house because my clothes were up there. That was my initiation. And then this is at the vice president's house with some of the grandchildren. And then that's the photo that I shot for Life magazine. It took on a life of its own after this. It first ran in Life magazine, 2 full pages. Bobby Baker Burrows, who was the photo editor at Life magazine, she really wasn't interested in me taking any photos for Life at that time because she didn't know me. And so after I shot this, then it started going on. And over the years, this has been in Classic Moments in Life and Best of Life, and just recently picked as one of the best in life for the past 75 years. So I was, blessed to have that honor. And then with Jeb, we used to go out on their boat all the time, Fidelity. And actually, if you go to the Bush Library, they actually have that boat up on display. And then with George W. and his son Marvin. Marvin, we had a really close relationship because I'd spent so many years with George Bush, and Marvin at one point got really sick and had to have a serious operation. He was right on the verge of passing away, and the Bushes, when they were a lot younger, living in Texas, lost a daughter to leukemia, so they had lost a child, and so the thought of losing another child was really, really, really tough for them. And when Marvin came home from the hospital, the president was so emotional about it, and he literally could not walk into the bedroom where Marvin was, and I was with him. And so he asked me to kind of walk in there and just see how he's doing, and I think it just gave him a moment or two to pull himself together, so then he walked into the bedroom and I immediately left. But years later, a similar thing happened when President Bush's mother passed away, and they had called me over to Mrs. Bush's house, his mother's house, and literally at her deathbed, and take a picture of the president with his mother. And then, of course, you all know George Bush's resume, but at one point in his career, he was the liaison to the People's Republic of China, and then to go back to China as President of the United States, it was really a lot of fun for him. He had a chance to visit with the staff that had still stayed there, and we're in Tiananmen Square. And it was literally just a few months after this that the students and people were fighting for freedom right there in Tiananmen Square, and we had just been there. And then this is Vice President Bush with shipyard worker Lech Walesa in communist Poland. And we had gone there to meet with him, and Lech Walesa said, "Someday you, George Bush, will be President of the United States, and Poland will be free." And we wound up going back to a free Poland when George Bush was president, and Lech Walesa was president of free Poland, and it was really it was kind of a neat experience for them. For me as a photographer, to kind of go full circle in that story was amazing. And then this is at Camp David. We used to go up to Camp David quite a bit, and that's President Gorbachev of the Soviet Union, and the two guys in the white shirts are the interpreters. They had a lot of meetings up there, and that's actually Camp David where I taught Gorbachev how to play horseshoes. They had all these meetings, and they decided to go on a break, and so President Gorbachev and his interpreter decided to just walk around the grounds, and so I thought, well, I'll just follow along and see what they're going to do, because I know George Bush was taking a nap, so I didn't have to worry about that. And he gets to the horseshoe pit, and they're like discussing it, and through the interpreter, I tell the interpreter, what the deal is with the horseshoe pit and all that. So I show him how to do it. He throws the first shoe, and the first throw gets a ringer. So he takes the horseshoe and keeps it. So I went and told the president that, the commie just stole your horseshoe. and so that night, the president, Camp David's a military base, and they got the Marines to make a little plaque, and they mounted one of the horseshoes on there and presented it to him. And then we met with President Gorbachev on a Russian ship off the coast of Malta, and during that meeting there was this huge storm, and the idea was we would go to their ship and then they'd come to our ship, but Gorbachev refused to go to the U.S. battleship because of the high seas, and so we would have to go over there. And that was quite an experience, because the swells were 20, 30 feet high, and they had this little transport boat, and so you would get to the edge of the ship, and the boat would go down on the swell, and then it would come up, and you'd have a second, and you'd make that step, and you would drop down, and the boat would come back up, and then the next guy would go, and it was a wild experience. The only good thing about that is that the lobster that we had brought all the way from Maine to serve to Gorbachev, he didn't eat. So guess who had that meal? And then I just thought it was kind of funny that they're in the Red Room at the White House. And then this is in Geneva with President Assad of Syria. It was actually the first time that a U.S. president met with the president of Syria. And then, of course, the Prime Minister of Japan playing horseshoes at the White House. And of course, Queen Elizabeth shows up with sterling silver horseshoes. So they've never really been touched, and they're on display over at the Bush Library, College Station. And then, of course, Boris Yeltsin was also there. And this is up in Kennebunkport. President was on the phone with King Fahd of Saudi Arabia, and they were having these discussions. And the president says, well, let me come over there, and we'll just meet in person and talk about it. So we leave here and get on Air Force One and fly to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and have this meeting. And this was, the phone call was on Friday, the meeting was on Saturday. When we come back Sunday night, and Monday morning we go to work, and people are saying, hey, what'd you do for the weekend? It's like, well, we went to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and met with the king. And then, of course, the Pope. It was like amazing news today to hear the Pope resigning. I guess that hadn't happened in 500 years, but this is Pope John Paul, and every time we went anywhere, I would always go with the president, and I would go in and take photos. And the very first time we arrived at the Vatican, I'm getting out of the motorcade, and I'm running up the steps to go in and photograph the president and the Pope, and a nun grabs me and by the arm, and she says, no, you can't go there. You have to go with me. And I said, well, no, I have to go with him. And she said, no, you go with me. And it's kind of hard to fight with a nun. So I went with her, and she takes me through all these hallways and walking through the Sistine Chapel, and we get to this one place, and she says, you stay right here. And I said, well, okay. I had no idea where I was. But about an hour later, she comes back and she says, well, are you ready to take your picture? And I said, yes. And she opens these two doors, and there they're standing. So the whole time, they were just on the other side of the door, and